So, yeah, good morning to friends from the US, good afternoon friends from UK and Europe, and good evening to all friends joining from India and Singapore. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here today for third of the Legal Town Hall series. Before I jump into the event, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the frontline COVID warriors who've been keeping the country and the globe safe while we are able to work within the confines of our homes. I'm Jidesh Kumar, and I'm the managing partner of Stubb and Kasiva. I'll be your co-moderator today. Co-moderating this session along with me today is Parmjit Singh. Param is the partner and head of the India practice of Eversheds Sutherland, one of the largest global law firms. He's got diversified interests in real estate, diversified in industrials. In today's event, we are meeting GCs from across the world who have operational expertise and functional expertise extending all the way from India to other continents, including Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe, North and South America. Today, we intend to discuss the challenges faced by the in-house community, not just Indian, but the global in-house community, and also try and understand what are the solutions, opportunities, and the key learnings during the pandemic. To discuss this and more, we have with us a distinguished panel of guests. Before I introduce them to you, I wanted to go through a few housekeeping items and share the format in which we'll be conducting this session. The entire session will be for about an hour and 30 minutes. For the first hour, we'll be doing the panel discussion. During this, I'll encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A box on your screens. Once the discussions with the panelists is complete, we'll open the floor for questions for about 25 to 30 minutes. Please use the raise hand icon on Zoom and we'll unmute your lines one by one and you can actually ask your questions live. You're also requested to identify yourself and stick to the questions posted. Let me now go ahead and introduce our panel here today. I'm going to be introducing the panel from outside India, and I'll let Param introduce our panel from India. Firstly, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Abhijit Mukhopadhyay. Abhijit is joining us from London. He's the President, Legal and General Counsel for Hinduja Group, with whom he's been for around 19 years. And before this, he also was associated with Ranbaxy Labs, Maruti Suzuki, Dunlop. So welcome, Abhijit. Next, we have Chaitanya Ramachandran. Chaitanya is joining us from Singapore, and Chaitanya is the Senior Legal Counsel Asia Pacific region for Twitter. Before this, he was also with Clifford Chance, a London, a UK law firm, and also with Shardul Amarchand Mangalas. Next, welcome Chaitanya.
Thanks.
Next, I'm glad to introduce you to Vinodh. Vinodh heads ETG and is based in Dubai and oversees ETG's global functions. Vinodh used to also head lifestyle. Welcome Vinodh to the event. Param, now I leave it to you to take up from here.
Thank you very much, Jidesh, and thank you to Jidesh, my dear friend, and to Lex Witness today for giving us the opportunity to co-moderate this legal town hall. So welcome to everybody who's joined us today. I'm delighted to introduce firstly Deepak. Deepak joins us from Mumbai, and he's the Director and Head of Legal for Welspun Group. Before he joined Welspun Group, Deepak was Vice President and Head of Legal for GBK Power and Infrastructure. And he's also had stints with Gammon Infrastructure as well. So welcome today, Deepak. Okay, good to see you. And then next we've got Nilanjan, who joins us from Mumbai. He serves as the Head of Legal for ICICI Bank, covering India and Southeast Asia. He has vast experience of working with several prestigious groups, including the Godrej and Boyce Group, Marsh and McLennan companies, Yes Bank, and Exide Industries. So welcome to Nilanjan as well today.
So thanks, Param, for this. Without any further ado, let's dive straight in and kick off this legal town hall. My first question is to Vinodh. Vinodh, what are the key attributes of an effective general counsel during this crisis?
Thanks, Jidesh, and good evening, everyone. So in my view, the key attributes for a GC remain, even during normal times or during a crisis, it remains the same. I think his role is always geared to handle crisis. So to be an effective GC, I think crisis management should be in the gene, and it should be a critical skill set. And to be a good crisis manager, I think first and foremost, you need to retain a calm demeanor. So as the saying goes, be like a duck, calm on the surface while paddling furiously underneath. Senior management, including the board, rely on the GC in times of crisis. And obviously, they do not want to rely on somebody who himself is in a panic mode or is perceived to be so. So I think that is the first and foremost and a key attribute. Secondly, I think you should keep your eyes and ears open for any disruptions in your industry. It could be threats, it could be opportunities. I think when you do that, you stay ahead of the curve, you stay ahead of the game, and you're able to handle crisis in a more appropriate manner. I think the last one might sound a little bit cliched, but I think a successful GC always has to be a good commercial lawyer. That is a commercially astute business lawyer. And I think this should be more so in times of a crisis, because you would all agree that crisis presents a lot of opportunities. I think so during these times, I think you need to support your business in grabbing those opportunities, while at the same time you should not lower your guard and perform your role as a lawyer. So I think these three are, in my view, key attributes.
Thank you, Vinodh. That was very insightful. Nilanjan, what are your views on this?
Thank you, Jidesh, and greetings to everyone. Abhijit, great to seeing you in person after a long time. But thank you, Lex Witness, and all of you for inviting me for this. I think what to me the attributes first is that you got to think about yourself now as a wartime leader. You are in a crisis. You have to really think of what does a military general do during wartime. So you got to first and foremost be like a wartime leader, which means that you have to lead from the front. Which means the military generals do two things, is what I understand. One, they lead from the front. Two, they also start empowering their people to take decisions at the epicenter. So I think one of the key attributes will be that how do you actually be able to manage that, and how are you able to sort of really create that atmosphere. That's sort of the first attribute. The second attribute to me is that you have to be decisive, as a leader. I think any which way, I think, I know Jidesh may not be politically correct addressing it to you, but, one of the big differences between an in-house lawyer and an external lawyer is that we don't hedge our decisions. We don't qualify our decisions. We got to look in the eye of our business leader and give a decision. This is more so, a time where you cannot hedge your decisions with qualifications. That's the second big attribute. The third big attribute to me is that you have to also ensure, I think this was mentioned, also, that you got to ensure that no one takes advantage of the situation. It's very, very easy now at this time to sort of take the easy way out, cut corners, sort of make excuses for slack on integrity, on adherence to principles, policies, in the garb of making quick buck, quick earning, short-term gains. So as a GC, you've got to be very careful that you can't let anybody take advantage and let your guard down on that. I think a couple of other things, and is that, of course, in every crisis, the most important attribute for anybody is to show empathy and sensitivity. You have to show empathy. You have to look at everything with a lot more empathy and be sensitive to situations people are dealing with. It will be a mental health situation people are dealing with. People are dealing with abnormal circumstances, which is why it's crisis. And to be able to understand and connect. And that leads me to the other point of saying that, the other attribute is that how do you communicate, or at the risk of over communicating, and empathy will come when you over communicate and certainly communicate. So those, of course, are some of the I think key attributes, I would say, as a general counsel, and keeping in mind that this is the time where resources are scarce, and therefore having a laser focus on operating expenses. That's things you could have done earlier. You got to think 20 times. Should I do that? Do I need to spend that money? Do I need to engage? And spend time. So I would say, I'll stop here, and but I think these are at least some of my thoughts of what would be sort of the key attributes anybody would, I think, whether it's a GC or whether it's a leader in business, one has to look for during crisis.
Thank you, Nilanjan, for that. Abhijit, the GC sometimes takes the role of the conscious keeper of the company, along with being a business enabler. How do you successfully collaborate with the CEO, other C-level directors, or the board as a public or a listed company GC?
Thanks, Param. A great question. I think the role of GC as a business enabler vis-a-vis conscience keeper, they remain all the time, whether there is COVID or whether there is no COVID. Now, most of the time, I find that in-house legal faces a very classic dilemma. Should they remain as strict legal person, or should they become a bit flexible, try to help the business? I think for me, the fundamentals is that we exist because businesses are there. If businesses do not exist, let us be very clear, no organization, no promoter, no shareholder will keep us in our job. So it is our duty to make sure that businesses not only survive, businesses even prosper. But even for a second, I am not telling or suggesting that it means that we should allow them to do all kinds of unethical job. Let us be very clear. Businesses, most of the jurisdictions operate legally. It is not that they want to do business other than law or other than in a lawful way. That is not the issue. But most of the time, as somebody who manages the legal affairs of really a conglomerate, and we have got 150,000 people working in more than 65 countries. Our global turnover is $18 billion. It's a very big business because we have got more than 12 business verticals in core areas of the economy. So therefore, I think the challenges that I face as general counsel of such a global conglomerate is that businesses come to me as someone who can provide some kind of solution. It is not that they come to me with some problem and they go back with their problem unresolved. So you have to have some kind of very good business knowledge, what the businesses do, what are their difficulties, how do they manage, make the business leaders as your esteemed colleague and whatnot, even as friends also, so that they should think of you, even if there is absolutely no problem, they should think of you more as a problem solver than anything else. So it's a very big challenge, and I think a general counsel can become very effective if he maintains the balance between the two, both at conscience keeper as well as someone who is really a friend of the business. I always say that my effectiveness will be judged how many times I get calls on a daily basis from the businesses asking for help, not the other way around, to work as some kind of teacher and find out what they are doing. That is the yardstick of my success.
Well, Abhijit, I think that's an observation that people like myself and Jidesh that work at law firms can take away as well, in terms of finding solutions for clients and obviously having those deep friendship relationships. So thank you very much for that thoughtful answer. Deepak, if I could ask you, what are your thoughts on that as well, please?
First of all, thanks, Param. Thanks, Jidesh. Thanks, Lex Witness, for having me on this webinar. I completely, first of all, echo what Abhijit mentioned. It's completely, to the point and very relevant. In our case as well, we've got several listed entities within the group. As a general counsel, you collaborate with at least 3 stakeholders within the company. One is, of course, the CEO and the CXO level. The expectation there clearly is, they are looking for strategic issues, financial implications, complex structures. But again, the advice needs to be very simple at all times. The advice cannot be as complex and be, shrouded in any manner. It needs to come out very, very clearly, simple advice, practical implementable solutions, balanced win-win approach is what they're looking for. And when it comes to the board, which typically comprises of nominee directors from banks, from lenders, from insurers, from investors, you typically find that they are looking for governance issues, compliance issues. They become very prominent when they are looking at anything that you deal with them. Those issues are crucial for them. Transparency becomes vital. Whenever you deal with other general counsel, whenever you deal with them, they need to find you as somebody who will tell them transparently what is right and what is wrong very, very clearly. And then not to forget the third level, which is of course the promoters. For them, reputational issues become extremely important. You've got to deal with them. When you deal with them, you need to keep the big picture in view all the time, because they have visions which go across businesses, go across. So those are the 3 main stakeholders with whom you deal with, and you need to be responsible to all 3.
Okay, thank you. I'll over to Jidesh.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. I think both Abhijit and Deepak, I think both your responses were absolutely insightful, very useful for the community, and also, like Param said, to law firms like ourselves, where we can help, figure out the right solutions for companies. Chaitanya, over to you now. What are the top 5 challenges that you as a company or you as a GC are facing during the pandemic?
First of all, Jidesh, thanks for having me. It's such a privilege to be part of such a distinguished panel. Challenges that I'm facing during the pandemic. I have to say the first one is the pandemic itself. I think most of us have at some point, watched one of these blockbuster apocalyptic movies, thinking that, it's very unlikely that we'd ever find ourselves in a situation like that, but here we all are. And I think having been in lockdown for months, having been in this situation of, I think most of us are working remotely, at times it's sometimes easy to lose sight of, what's happening out there in the wider world. But the reality is that there is still untold suffering out there in the wider world and massive global disruption. So I think it's very sobering to, think that this is the world we're living in right now. So I think that's probably the first and the most important. The next thing I would say that's posing a challenge is a general level of uncertainty about the future. I think at this point of time, it's really anyone's guess when things will get back to something resembling what we once thought of as being normal circumstances. Nobody really knows what the life cycle of the pandemic is going to be. And more importantly, the temporary changes or the changes that we currently think of as being temporary to the way that we work and do business, many of them are probably going to end up becoming permanent, and we don't know which ones those are. So I think that uncertainty is definitely very challenging. I think another major challenge is just the way we work day to day. I think the lockdowns and this period of extended working from home has completely broken and upended the normal rhythms of day-to-day work. I think most of us may have some experience, doing part-time remote work. But I think for most of us, this is the first time that we are indefinitely working remotely full-time, conducting all our meetings with internal stakeholders, with external customers, 100% remotely. On a personal level, trying to maintain some semblance of balance between our work life and our personal lives. So that disruption to our normal rhythms of work, I think, is something that most of us are still challenging with, still contending with to a greater or lesser degree. But at the same time, I do think that it does present tremendous opportunities for the future, because if some of the changed ways that we're working now get normalized in the future, I think it can introduce a lot of efficiencies. It can really improve the way that we work. And I think the best example is not having to commute. I think that saves most of us so much time in a day that can be so much better employed towards more productive ends. I think another thing, zooming in a little bit more on legal work, I think the pandemic currently is looming very large over my day-to-day work as an in-house lawyer. I think when an issue comes up regarding a contract that we've signed maybe even years ago, the first thing that always comes to mind is how does the pandemic impact our performance of this contract? How does it impact the counterparty's performance? And then even that spills over into negotiating and signing new contracts. I think most of us are probably seeing custom language that we've been introducing into our contracts, especially short-term contracts that have to be performed over the next 3 months, 6 months, and managing risk in those contracts emanating from COVID-19. And then I think litigation is another big question mark. For those of us who have pending court cases, what's going to happen to those cases? How long are they going to be in limbo? I think that's definitely something that is a major source of stress. And I think finally, just to conclude on a personal note, I think the extreme limitations on social contact and interaction are a major challenge. I think I'm much more used to doing remote meetings now than I was 2 months ago. But at the same time, I'm not 100% convinced that it's a perfect substitute for meeting people in person.
Thank you, Chaitanya. Abhijit, what are the being the GC of a global conglomerate? What do you think are the top 5 challenges that you faced?
First and foremost challenge on an individual basis is to keep myself fit, both physically as well as mentally. You are always near to the kitchen, so always there will be a temptation. You raid your refrigerator and start eating. So refraining from getting into the kitchen, keeping myself fit, that's the first major challenge. And unless and until we succeed that challenge, we overcome that challenge, the rest of the challenges will all fail. Second challenge is that you have got the duty to not only keep your morale high, but also the motivation high for all the people, whether they are working with you, whether they are your colleagues, or whether they are your own department. Because finally, at the end of the day, even business people, they are all human beings. Many times when I talk to them on a global basis, I find some colleagues, they will be under depression. So therefore, keeping their morale high, keep them motivated is extremely important. third challenge is that you maintain effective quote unquote control over your people whom you are working with. They are your department. You are remotely asking them to work, and there will be all kinds of people there. So therefore, very effective communication, coordination are needed so that everybody is on the same page. And as leader, as GC, I have to take that initiative. Fourth is that effective coordination with the promoter shareholder. You know, for us, it's really a challenge because the ultimate owner of this huge business conglomerate is the Hinduja family. And there are 9 members of the Hinduja family sitting across the globe. They manage their business. And since I report to each one of them, it's my duty to get in touch with them, to take instructions. And every time we are a very happening organization, it keeps happening, businesses keep running all the time. And you have to be in touch with them, they have to be in touch with you. So that coordination, not only with your colleagues, with your businesses, but also with the promoter shareholders are extremely important. And last but not the least, fifth one is that, you got to be very innovative and creative. I can give my example. On 16th of March, I had a meeting with our group chairman, and I told him that it is high time, the way things are happening, because we are in Europe, our global headquarters is in London. It is better that we close it. And he told me, Abhijit, when do you want to close? Close means in our global headquarters in London. I said, close it from tomorrow. So we just go home on 16th March night, and then from 17th March, nobody is coming to our global headquarters. Now, this is a big challenge. We are not used to work from home. So then how to become very creative, how to become innovative, and how to remain so, because we do not know when we are going back. Already almost 95 days are over. We are all working from home. So therefore, to remain innovative, creative all the time is really a challenge. These are the 5 major challenges I can think of, but I all support what my other panelists have said. These challenges also will be there.
Jidesh, may I make a quick comment before you move on, if you may allow?
Yes, please. Nilanjan, yes.
I say the other challenge, according to me, is the fact that work has come home today. And what that means is that, I'll tell you about my personal example. I have a pet, and because the air conditioner is on in the room I work, he prefers to stay in the room where I work. So every time it's my chance to speak, he decides to bark. Now, how many times, and if it is, God forbid, if it's a committee meeting, I look sheepish. But that is actually one of the big challenges that, there is, how do you, because the fellow in my home believes that the house is his from 9 to 5. And now suddenly it is not his. And this actually, while I'm trivializing it, but it is actually a very big challenge because work has come home. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's fine. Where is he now, though? I can't hear him at the moment.
Today, fortunately, because, you all told me it's an important meeting, I decided to come to the office and work from the office.
Okay. Well, he's obviously missing you, so that's great. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Just moving on, in terms of Vinodh, in terms of what would you consider to be some of the key changes that a GC has had to adopt, learn during and post COVID?
No doubt the world has changed. We may not go back to the pre-pandemic era, and I think what we're witnessing is a paradigm shift in every industry, every business, the way they're operating. You name it: schooling, telemedicine, even religious sermons are now going digital. So I think that one most important thing is how you work in this digital environment. I think it will be an understatement to say that the workplace will embrace technology more. So keeping this in mind, I think I've thought about 5 things. I think two aspects the fellow panelists have already touched upon, which is work from home and how a corporate office is going to look like in the future. But I would rather talk about two other things or three other things, one of which is rapid reskilling. So as a GC, you should be able to have to ensure that your skill sets are effective and relevant in the digital platform as well. So this may need some honing of skills and adaptation. And a corollary to that is, I mean, this is not applicable not just for GCs but to every lawyer, every in-house lawyer. I think you need to move from the era of specialization. You need to be proficient in more than one area of law. For example, if you're doing litigation, I think it's time that you pick up your skills in, say, in IP or contracts or M&A. So I think the lawyer who's proficient in more than one branch of law or aspect of law would be in demand going forward. The second is on communication. I think the GC should develop effective communication skills through work in a digital platform. Now that companies have gone fully virtual, individuals are communicating more efficiently and more frequently across a network and environment. So here I'd like to take a personal example. Like we in ETG, we have legal teams which are operating in 3 different jurisdictions, and in Mumbai, in Dubai, and in Johannesburg. So obviously it's really difficult to kind of network or engage with your team. So what we have done at ETG is we have set up 2-hour sessions every week where we all connect on Teams. And what we do here is, I mean, we make one person, one lawyer to present on a topic which is relevant to his jurisdiction and office specialization. So I think you achieve two things here. One is you get to engage, the engagement across the team improves. And secondly, obviously you improve, I mean, you start learning new things. So this has become a kind of a weekly feature since the pandemic started, and I think we will continue to keep it going. The third thing in my view is motivation. I mean, I'm sure most of you would have had queries from your teams in terms of job security and longevity. So I think as a GC, you need to keep the motivation levels in your team. And how do you do this? I think GC must provide crisp, outcome-driven expectations to the team so that they can deliver on goals successfully. So this would mean motivating employees to perform will require modeling and measurement of their outputs. So I think these 3 are, in my view, 3 important aspects. And of course, I think work from home, which I think Abhijit and Nilanjan have referred to that. So I don't want to add on that. And of course, you need to adapt to the new way how corporate offices, obviously it's not going to look the same going forward. I mean, like most workplace changes, it is not a complete replacement. Just as the resume did not go away with LinkedIn, I think the corporate office will be there, but I think in a different way than what we look at it today.
Thank you, Vinodh. I don't think there's any doubt that how we work in the future is going to change as a result of what's happened here. Nilanjan, I just wondered whether you could just share with us your top 5 changes that you're going to see in terms of what we learn, how we're going to adapt during, and I think crucially now, hopefully after COVID-19.
Yeah, in school when I was asked top 5, I normally gave 7 answers because just to hedge that in case 2 are incorrect, the 5 would still be correct. So if you allow me, can I give 7 such
of
things?
Course. Yeah.
I think first, I think what we have to adopt, learn, and adapt is technology. Is that how do we sort of in our legal delivery system, as we call, an in-house lawyers also, as well as what you all do, we do legal delivery of our job. And, how do you do legal delivery using technology? And whether it is through this, using various law tech initiatives which have come up, whether it is, to being comfortable with the due diligence being done using AI, or whether it is, using sort of technology for doing your negotiations, whether it is, using technology for creating, consensus, all of that, I think that is what one has to start adopting. and then and try and learn that and get better at it. I think that's one, which I think always was the reason, but now it has become more evident. The second, big one, according to me, is collaboration. How do you collaborate? Is how do you learn remote collaboration? How do I, if I want to change somebody's, Chaitanya's view and on something, how do I look at him as a somebody in the screen? And sometimes people switch off videos, so therefore you can't even say that you switch it on. So you're not in the same room, yet you have to get the person in the same room. How do you create that collaboration? Particularly how do you create consensus when you really have, disagreements? And I've always seen that it's easy when you're being able to read a body language of a person, and then adapt to a body language. What to push and then to pull out. How much will be too much. That collaboration, how do you create? And then so that's the other one. I think the next one is that working with, and I alluded to this already, that how do you work with lesser resources? When you are, it could be simple things like I'm used to, and I'm still very old school, I'm used to taking printouts of anything which is important I need to read, and be able to read that and mark it up, and then walk into the meeting with my marked up draft. I don't have that luxury when I'm at home and I'm working in this manner. How do I still do that? Can I, how do I, this is just one example, but then there are similar things that you are really, in a situation where you are having lesser resources to work with. And I think to that also is a lot of things now are a DIY mode. Today you are, even simple things like having an executive assistant. You don't have the luxury of an executive assistant. You are, at least I can talk about India, we are at least used to having executive assistants from a very young age. And then suddenly you're left with a situation that you've got to manage all of it yourself, whether it's your calendar, whether it is a follow-up for something, whether it is keeping track of things, and how do you really do this yourself? That's something which I think is a big challenge. And I must say, I personally speaking, I struggled in the first few months, when the first few days or weeks when it was. And I of course, there is no one here in the room to vouch for it, but I personally think that I've got better at it. I've got better at, being able to manage my stuff. I put everything down in my diary and calendar and stuff like that. So that's the thing. In India specific, there are two I think specific risks in which comes from India specific matters, and I don't know what's happening in the other jurisdiction. One is that we are having rapid change in law. If one has tracked India and jurisdiction, you would see the number of legislations which have been changes which have come. There are changes in our country which covers, as I say, all the fours. It covers liquidity, it covers land, it covers law, it covers labor. And there are these 4 L's where there has been quite a paradigm kind of change. They are not tinkering. How do you keep, how do you sort of embrace these and try and, in fact, just before this meeting, I was speaking to someone and he said, why are you busier than earlier? I said, I'm busier because there is so much of law change to keep and to sort of keep abreast is a problem. The other point is that, there is a big change, and a very rightly so, and our bank has been on the, forefront of it, is online dispute redressal. How do we sort of learn? How do we adapt? How do we embrace? How do we, go on with it? Whether it's an online hearing of court, whether it is on, we are as a bank propagating and pushing a lot on online dispute redressal, which is alternate dispute redressal, ADRs and mediations. How do you learn that skill and be able to deliver on that skill. So to me, these are a few challenges, as I would say. And I'm sorry it's a long answer, but I just thought I had to.
That's fine, Nilanjan. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass it back to Jidesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Param. Thanks a ton. Deepak, quickly, I'm also conscious of the fact that we're already 45 minutes into this event, and all the answers are so interesting. So I'm sure the audience is also very interested, because I keep seeing the audience notes. And but let's try and keep the answers a little shorter, because we have some questions and we need to cover all. So to Deepak, Deepak, what are your thoughts on how companies will embrace the new world, especially real estate, employees, workplace, once we return to office after the pandemic?
Well, Jidesh, very relevant question. I feel the impact will be deep and it will be in many areas everlasting. Offices are bound to shrink from here on. Emphasis will be on delivery rather than physical presence. You see, the whole concept of being physically there is now not going to apply to a lot of functions, legal included. Retaining talent will continue to be a challenge, because retaining good talent across is never, going to go away as a challenge. I see a great opportunity at this time to build teams, to train teams, and do that sort of work at this time itself. Legal function will move, as Abhijit also rightly mentioned, Nilanjan also mentioned, towards paperless. Going to move very much towards paperless, like it or you don't like it, you'll have to do that. Move more on common platform technologies where you can, share draft, where you can work, in a very cohesive manner with other functions. That's another change which will happen. One more thing which is going to happen is that we will have to reskill some of the talent within your own team. For example, the IP team today in Welspun has started looking at IT contracts, e-com contracts. So because they're very talented in terms of their technical know-how and technical understanding of things. So that reskill bit is extremely important, and we've started doing that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Deepak. Vinodh, over to you now. Vinodh, the board and management teams of companies at the C level are meeting more often now than the statutory requirement, especially during the pandemic. So what has been their ask to you as a general counsel?
The board, especially boards where there are independent directors, they have a responsibility to the shareholders, and the management as the additional everyday role towards employees, vendors, banks, financial institutions, counterparties, so on and so forth. So I think this is especially in an organization which is operating across multiple geographies. There is a lot of information needed across geographies. So I think from my perspective, the biggest ask has been for information, especially given the more than 50 plus jurisdictions where we operate. So a lot of effort has gone in by the team in trying to collate this information, filtering the information, and trying to present the most appropriate information to the senior management and the board. I think this has been one major ask. And the other one has been a lot of focus on intercompany transactions, corporate governance practices. We have ramped up our compliance function in terms of making the KYC onboardings all very more stringent. So I think this, from our perspective, this has been the major asks during this time.
Vinodh, thank you very much for that. Abhijit, it'd be obviously useful to get your perspective on that. One thing that we've all discovered is Zoom and Teams, and how have you gone about communicating with? You mentioned the fact that you've got 9 directors that you reporting to at various locations. How have you managed all of that?
Well, I think 9 is really the owners of the entire empire. They are the ultimate shareholders from the Hinduja family. But then below them, I work very closely with the CEOs of many corporations around the world. Many of them are listed companies. I myself am the board of many other companies in the group. And then other than this, I have got the business leaders with whom I have to communicate. So therefore, I think communication is a key. You see, our main problem is that we are accustomed to go to the office traditionally. Many times we will communicate through telephone. Many times we will communicate through WhatsApp calls. These are all in addition to our physical meetings. Now, suddenly you realize that there is no physical meeting. And these are all some kind of, virtual meetings, which we are not used to, at least, in-house councils, we are not used to have this kind of physical, virtual meetings. So therefore, there's a challenge in terms of everything. Challenge how to remain simple, challenge how to communicate effectively in fewer words, challenge how to really put across your views very, very effectively, challenge how to even remain quiet when others are speaking, because many times in the meetings, we are not used to it when we are meeting physically. Always there will be, very lively interactions and all that. Whereas in a virtual meeting, you really cannot do that. So these are all the challenges. So more discipline is needed in terms of communication, how effectively we can communicate, and when you are communicating with your own people, how to motivate them, how to, how to keep them completely engrossed into what exactly you are telling. So those things are really the challenges. Many times we are not used to it. As I said, that we are used to go to the office traditionally. Now these things have gone. So this will remain a big challenge for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhijit. And just moving on to Chaitanya, what is the role of technology in both managing the COVID crisis for an in-house team?
Yeah, I'm not going to be the most unbiased commentator on this because I work at a tech company. But regardless,
that's why we're asking you.
So I must say that it's been a complete lifesaver. It's just made life so much easier as an in-house lawyer during these, unusual times that we're living through. I also think that one of the silver linings of this pandemic for in-house lawyers is I really think it gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to modernize our legal departments and rely on technology to help us do our job better. I'll give you a few examples that I really think have made my life easier. Number one has to be e-signatures. I mean, this is a technology that I think has really proven its value during the last 3 months. I've been a proponent of signing everything using e-signatures and digital signatures for years. And I think over the last few years, we've definitely seen more and more counterparties in our industry adopt e-signatures, but it's so heartening to see that trend accelerating greatly over the last couple of months. So I hope that that's something that sticks and we see e-signatures being the standard in the future rather than wet signatures. Another thing that I'm personally very excited about, although I don't know how long this is going to last, is online court hearings. I think especially in a massive country like India, it's just not feasible for GCs to personally monitor hearings in different, you may have, one hearing every day of the week in a different part of the country, and it's not practical to monitor those. If online hearings become the norm, and I think the jury is definitely out on that, pun not intended, I think it'll be so much easier for GCs to personally monitor hearings in real time as they happen. So that's one that I really hope sticks around in the future. A couple of other technologies that I think have really made my life easier. We do rely a lot on the automation of our most common contract types. And so that really frees up the lawyer's time and helps us focus on the areas where we really add value, which is customizing contracts and negotiating them with counterparties rather than generating them. So automating contracts, I think, has been a big game changer for us. And then I think another symptom of the uncertain times we're living on is I think a lot of companies are keeping an eye on their costs. A lot of legal departments certainly are keeping an eye on costs. And I think we have technology now that not only gives us a dashboard to look at all of our legal bills, But the most exciting part is it actually lets us do analytics around that. So we can monitor trends in our outside counsel spending, and then we can slice and dice it, a dozen different ways. We can look at it month to month, quarter to quarter. We can compare different regions within the same region or the same jurisdiction. We can compare different firms. So I think that is really that's really helping us keep an eye on costs and make our operations more efficient. So these are just a few examples. There are definitely many others, but I must say that technology has been a real lifesaver for me.
I think we've all been pleased that technology has been so robust during this period of time. It's enabled all of us to work remotely in a way I don't think any of us anticipated. Nilanjan, just moving on to you, what has been your efforts in regard to technology, and do you have any instructions to employees regarding cyber risks?
Look, insofar as technology is concerned, look, just imagine having a lot of money in your bank account and not being able to withdraw it because of there is social distancing or a lockdown. So as a bank, I think we as a bank, we've been very focused, unfortunately, for a long time, that all our customer deliveries and customer services have moved onto a digital platform. A large part of whether it's lending, whether it is bread and butter banking account, e-commerce, all of that has now moved to a digital offering. What that means is that, of course, from a cyber risk perspective, we also equally have a lot of customer information, and which is why the bank also has a lot of policies around dealing with customer information. So we have, what I've seen happening is that, again, I am personally really not involved, but I have seen a lot more awareness being created by us as banks by our IT security within the bank itself to all bank employees. We almost on a daily basis get reminders about being careful with respect to when we are working from home and remotely. Equally, we are you will see a lot of customer education happening to customers, where we're making customers aware of how they should not fall prey to sort of looking at information which is being done, which is lot of you get sometimes link, and that link may actually turn out to be a link which is just going to get into your mobile and remotely swipe your mobile and SIM card and whatever kind of thing. Things sometimes to me looks like very sci-fi, but then they are true. And so to me, I think the two things which I would say that from a banking perspective, we've already been very, very digitally savvy. Fortunately, even as a legal team, we've been, quite, at a risk of sounding pompous, but we've been a little ahead of the curve, where we have already had introduced things like a digital chatbot, where our branches all over the country, they don't need to come to legal departments for a lot of queries. They can just push it, punch in their query and get the response. And similar, such initiatives, we have a system of sort of where we can digitally troll our, the court systems and get updates about what kind of matters are pending with ICICI and what are the next date, what are the hearing dates, and what are the orders. That happens remotely, digitally. So those, of course, are things which is not COVID triggered. These are things which we've been doing for some time now. So honestly speaking, that has not been a challenge for us. So it's been very seamless for us to do. Insofar as what we are telling our employees, I think we've been already telling our employees for a long time, very well, structured policies around this. So nothing I would say new, except just reminding us to do the things which we've been doing for a long time.
Okay, thank you.
Over to Deepak. what impact do you see on contracts, especially force majeure, frustration, those kind of events being discussed these days, and also dispute resolution post-COVID?
Okay, Jidesh, first of all, when I talk about contracts, the whole the view about how you see risk mitigation and the risk mitigation advice that we need to give will completely undergo a change at this moment. It's undergoing a change, in fact, right now also. Creditworthiness, for example, was not an issue for a lot of us in case of many clients now looking at credit lines again. Do you have credit backups? All those questions are there. Supply chain issues. These are the key issues for us at this moment. Force majeure is one of these issues, which is again well documented. If documented, it's there. You deal with it. But some of these other issues that we are seeing going forward are going to be extremely important for us. Due diligence, whenever you're doing any acquisitions, becoming very challenging going forward. It's not going to be easy to do due diligences, especially look at it this way. If you're a real estate company, how do you do a due diligence property search? Very difficult in India at this moment. How do you do that? Yeah. Overall, the life cycle of a contract, we see that the life cycle of a contract will see that the overall turnaround time is going to change. It's going to come down, in my view, because negotiations cannot last the way it used to be earlier. People would use technology. The negotiation time is actually going to come down. So as far as contracts are concerned, I feel these sort of changes are now going to be imminent as we go forward. When it comes to disputes, I see the luxury litigation which has been happening in India will go away. We will see this pandemic will lead to the entire luxury litigation, the convenient litigation which used to happen will go away. Secondly, mediation and conciliation is going to pick up. Mediation is something which is not so active in India at this moment, but I'm clearly seeing, we were a part of a couple of, last 2 months, we've been a part of one mediation and one conciliation proceedings this moment. So we clearly see that that's going to pick up because there is a desire now for people to do that. Lastly, again, you're saying online arbitrations bound to pick up. Chaitanya rightly pointed out, it's not possible that, you can live with doing arbitrations across countries when you have this technology available. So that's again something which is bound to happen. And lastly, technology by courts. What I foresee is that certain matters, the courts will themselves decide now going forward that these sort of matters will only be held through online or, technology, served hearings. So that's the way to go, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. And I'm just very conscious of time. We're going to be moving to the live webinar very soon. I'm just going to jump to a question for Abhijit. We were seeing a lot more interest in India becoming an alternative to China as a manufacturing hub for, say, global companies. How do you see COVID and how India have dealt with it affecting this investment going forward?
I think your question is relevant, but it is linked to the political question. And you understand where I am coming from. China is facing the heat now because of the reasons well known to everybody. Sitting in the West, I can say that India has come into renewed focus once again because of the many reasons. And it is connected with the political reason to start with. Why India has become the focus once again? Because in the West, there is a growing realization that China is using its money power to acquire businesses worldwide. Now that is happening in the last many years, but unfortunately, the Western nations, they really did not give much credence or heed to it. Now they are giving. That's why we see in Germany, new laws have coming that tomorrow if you want to acquire BMW, you won't be able to acquire that company, no matter whether you pick up shares from the market or not. We are seeing pan-EU legislations are being brought in to prevent companies from China, basically, to come and acquire companies here. We are seeing that in the UK, new regulations are being brought in. We are seeing in the UK, there's a debate going on whether they will be permitted to get into the 5G business or not. So the bottom line is that people are relooking their economic model. People are relooking their business model. Nations are looking the way they are doing business now. Nations are looking into their supply chain management. Everybody is looking into what is happening. Now, obviously, China is a huge country. So if you don't want to do much or if you want to restrict, then where is the alternative? And that is where the alternative right now for the time being is focused on India. My final line will be that it is for India to free up policies, to remain very stable in terms of policy decisions, not to keep changing the policies time and again. And then decisions should be taken very fast. There's a golden opportunity. So I see that there will be renewed interest on India. And if India can catch up with the expectation, it will be a good place to start business.
Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you for this. Now, before we head up to the Q&A session, we have a very interesting and fun new segment, which is part of almost all talk shows now, which is called the Rapid Fire Round. So here we're going to ask about 3 questions to each participant, and would like to know your 1 word or maximum 1 sentence response to the question. Param, over to you.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I'm a host on a quiz show or anything like that, but I'll give it a go. Give it a go. Okay, thank you, Jidesh. Starting off with Nilanjan, what is the 1 great learning during this pandemic for you personally?
Need more t-shirts and shorts. White shirts are not good enough.
Okay, excellent. That's what we want. Rapid. Deepak? You're on mute, Deepak.
I think it is effective use of technology for legal function. Yeah.
Excellent. Tatiana?
I'm just amazed at how adaptable and resilient we human beings are and how we've taken this in our stride.
Okay, excellent. Vinodh?
In a purely lighter vein, I think pay your life insurance premium on time. and on a serious note, I think the importance of family time.
Yeah, excellent. And Abhijit?
I think remain smart. And when you say remain smart, it has got many dimensions. You know, remain smart in terms of your family, remain smart in terms of creativity, innovativeness, etc. So therefore, this is my take. You remain smart and do whatever you want to do.
Okay, excellent. And the next question, and once again, I'll start with Nilanjan, and he may mention his dog, but did you pick up an interest and hobby to beat the stress of the COVID-19, and what was that?
So I have actually started rereading Bengali literature. You know, there is Satyajit Ray, and I've discovered the marvel of reading Satyajit Ray's short stories and taking them into a dream world. And just relating that stories over dinner time with my family. That's been a great stress buster.
That's a great way to spend time. Deepak?
Well, honestly, this has been a very demanding time. You know, others may agree that this has been a very demanding time, but what we've done is that we've started this legal social aid. So we've been providing social aid within the company. We employ about 20,000 people. Yeah. We're trying to help people with wills and power of attorneys and such stuff, whatever is important to them.
Yeah, well,
so very satisfying personally. Yeah.
Thank you, Deepak. Chaitanya?
For me, I've been working on improving my guitar playing.
We may have some time for that at the end. Okay. Vinodh?
Yeah, I signed up for a course on the Bhagavad Gita. I was always fascinated by it. And 10 chapters down the line, I just realized I skimmed the surface. Long way to go.
Abhijit?
I think I'm trying to be more spiritual, trying to spend more time with myself, trying to introspect what I am doing right, what I am not doing right, what are the changes I should bring in.
Yeah, fantastic. And the final quick question, what's your advice to in-house lawyers to be successful GCs? And we'll start off with, again, with Nilanjan.
So my advice is lage raho. So it means that, you know, there is really no shortcut to becoming a successful GC. You know, you need to sort of give it time to you know, get some training under some great mentor, for a prolonged period for you to become really a successful GC. So rather than a quick and the first GC job, that's why I say lage raho.
Okay. And Deepak? Sorry, you're on mute, Deepak, sorry.
Yes, sorry. So understand your business, build acceptability within the organization, inculcate a habit of, answering in yes or a no, and take very fair positions whenever you negotiate.
Well, I look forward to negotiating with you if that's going to be the case then. Okay. Chaitanya?
For me, it's number one is pick an industry that you're passionate about. Assert your independence as a lawyer, and try and listen more than you speak.
Okay, that's very good advice. Thank you. Vinodh?
Yeah, I think cut out the legalese, speak like the business, speak with the business without lowering your guard.
Yeah. And Abhijit?
Remain a business-focused general counsel, because as I said at the beginning, if the business remains, then general counsels also remain. That is the fundamental.
Well, thank you very much for those quick fire answers. So I'm now going to pass back to Jidesh.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists for this fun round. Now we'll open the floor to questions. Akshay, we have some speakers, or I see that there are about 90 plus questions, as well as there are a few live questions right now. So should we take that up first, or should we do the audio round of the Q&A? Do we have a queue up?
Sure, Jidesh. Let's take some live questions first.
Sure.
Mr. Christopher Hayes, can you please ask your question live?
Hi, well, huge thanks to Jidesh and Parm for what has been a really interesting debate. I think my question is to the panel is around sort of how best that GCs can advise businesses given the huge uncertainty that there is across the globe at the moment. I mean, you take into consideration, obviously, India's lockdown laws have now been devolved down to the state level. It's the same in the US. In the UK, you have 4 different entities all having different sort of rules and regulations. So how do you cut through that? And also, how do you balance the need between the minimum legal requirements and what is actually the best practice?
Abhijit, do you want to take that up?
Yeah, I can do it. I think everything is not doom and gloom. Vaccine is coming, so do not worry. In the UK, the production has already started or is going to start anytime soon. Although the government is putting a rider there that once it is approved. So that means the vaccine is coming. And once the vaccine is coming, and human beings are, as race, extremely resilient. What happened in Second World War, the entire Europe and parts of Asia were destroyed, and they have all come back and bounced back. You see, the thing is that there are $10 trillion, which many countries, especially the G20 countries, they have offered as stimulus. So I'm very, very hopeful that once that money starts coming in, obviously there will be opportunities, the business will restart. We came across 1930s Great Depression. We overcame the Second World War, and the world is becoming more and more richer than it was 50 years back. So it's a question of opportunity. Human beings, definitely have got the minds and, interest of their own. They will certainly come up with ideas which will be translated into more economic activities. I'm very optimistic about it. Now, our role as GC, that there will be a testing time, because the traditional role will, slowly disappear. How quickly we adapt to the business requirements, how quickly we become innovative, how quickly we become creative, because businesses will come back with all kinds of creative ideas. And if we are up to speed, if we can support them, then certainly as GC, we will remain successful.
All right. Can I speak? All right. So myself, Cyril Jacob. Can you hear me?
Very clearly.
Mr. Cyril Jacob, please
Yeah, okay.
yes.
So my question is regarding force majeure. Any of you can answer it, though I heard Deepak Chauhan very slightly mentioning about it. So I believe, I've come across certain documents where it is mentioned that force majeure, the clause happens to be very biased towards the customers. It affects the stand of business owners. This in respect of rental agreements, because many people who were on rent during the pandemic, they were not paying their rents on time. So how does force majeure come into play? If somebody could be more specific on this.
Nilanjan, do you want to take this up or?
I mean, look, this has to extent, I think the answer is there in already there in the one of the judgments, if I remember, of the Delhi High Court. First and foremost, in India, the concept of force majeure doesn't exist. Seldom would you have a force majeure kind of circumstances mentioned in a rent agreement. I don't think a force majeure can be called, in a pandemic kind of thing, situation can is a force majeure event. And I'll be very surprised that, a rent agreement, if you were to say, contemplates a force majeure, a pandemic as a force majeure event, even if when you've negotiated this. So for us, in the context of Indian law, it does not exist. It is either a frustration of contract, and therefore, if you cancel the lease agreement, and you're welcome to vacate it. And this, I think, has already been upheld by the Delhi High Court, or if I remember correctly. So the way to go, according to me, is not using legal negotiation, legal sort of tools, but it is through negotiation. You sit down with people, and particularly in commercial contract, what I hear is that people are sitting down and negotiating and saying that, look, let's negotiate and look at what works for both. That's the way I think it should work.
Sure. Cyril, to add to what Nilanjan said, clearly the term force majeure, is not does not derive its right from any provisions of the Act. So it is a contractual right between two parties. It's a contractual arrangement. So if it is decided as to what is a force majeure, then you also have to look at what are the issues revolving around the force majeure event, whether this event is part of your force majeure. If not, look at other things. For example, there are various doctrines that you can think of. For example, there's a doctrine of suspension of rent, there's a doctrine of impossibility, doctrine of improbability, and of course, there's also this every rental agreement or lease agreement would also have a term vis-a-vis peaceful possession of the property. So that could also be used, because nobody is giving you peaceful possession of the property, so you could also negotiate back. So like Nilanjan said, it's really commercial legal solution rather than purely legal solution or a purely commercial solution.
Yeah, Jidesh, if I can add, in the rent agreement, it's very difficult to get any kind of force majeure clause. And we face this problem where either we are renting out or we are taking rent. So it is really a problem. But in the commercial contract, especially in the West, there is a concept of force majeure. Say, for example, in the banking contract, there is nothing like force majeure. And today, in several cases, we are renegotiating with the banks that because of the pandemic, whether it is possible to renegotiate the contract, but we are at the mercy of the bankers, because, if the lenders don't agree, then of course you can't renegotiate. Whereas in case of business contracts, we are suffering in both ways, where we have promised to deliver certain, for example, vehicles or goods, etc. on time. Many times we are facing the customers are using the force majeure clause and telling that we are unable to accept that delivery. So we have to fight out that. Whereas on the other hand, where we can exercise our force majeure because of the pandemic, we are doing it. But at the end of the day, it is quite a contentious issue, and I can completely agree with Nilanjan. Every time you can't use your legal remedy and then go and fight with the other side, you have to sit down and you have to come to certain terms in the spirit of give and take, and then solve the matter in a commercial way rather than in a legal way.
And Jidesh, I would just make a very quick observation. I think in terms of the relationship between parties will change. So when it comes to real estate going forward, the relationship between the developer, the landlord and the tenant, in terms of if you cannot use a facility, then why are you paying rent? And so that's one of the key things that will change. And also we've talked about during this panel how we'll work more remotely, more people will work remotely, so there'll be less use of office space, even though there are well-being benefits for teams to get together. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be a big negotiation going forward.
Thank you. The thing I asked is because I had drafted a lease agreement with this particular force majeure clause, and it had me thinking whether I made a foolish mistake of including it, or was I acting in overconfidence? Jidesh sir, you're not audible.
Mr. Jidesh, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, can we move to the next question?
Yeah. Ms. Karima Sharma, please ask your question live.
Yeah, this is question to all the panelists. Kindly just elaborate what best safeguards can the legal department take to avoid the technical risk at these stages of the e-contracts, especially during this e-signatures and e-witnesses. If you could just elaborate a little bit on it.
Nilanjan, again you, because this is, yeah.
No, I think I would only say that you've got to have a credible service provider who you would be using for the e-signature platform. That I think is there, because really what you're looking at is that the service provider plays a part and a role in getting this signature done. The other thing to do is that from a perspective is that, look, the e-signatures could be in the form of either in Indian context an Aadhaar-based e-signature, or it could be sometimes a digital signature which is done through, through flash drives, which is there. A lot of time what happens is that if you are the signatory, because it is like is somebody forging your signature. So similarly, if somebody else has been given access to that. So when it comes to an Aadhaar-based signature or things like that, there is a biometric and there is, it is, I think, simpler. But if it comes to, one of those flash drive-based e-signatures, then you have to be careful that there is no misuse of the signature. So therefore, it has to be kept in safe custody. It has to be authorized to be used. Insofar as we are concerned, we also want to try and ensure that the company and in the context of two corporates, the company has actually authorized execution of this documents through a digital mode, and that is recorded if it's a board resolution authorization that covers that. But those would be, to me, just more. I mean, I would say it's more operational risks than any legal risks. I don't really see a legal risk as such in doing it. The risks are operational.
I think, Garima, in addition to what Nilanjan has said, I will say eventually try to get the hard copy and physical copy signed by the signatories also.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I just wanted to just mention, that because we still, there will be still a lot of technical risks that will evolve in this era that we are still evolving into.
Thank you, Ms. Karima. Over to you, Jidesh. You may now address the question in the Q&A box. We're receiving interests and requests from attendees to address questions in the Q&A box as well. Thank you.
We have time for just one or two questions because we, So this question is from Sunita Japtiani of Mahindra Comviva. So her question is, if a contract does not contain contrary clauses, can we invoke force majeure clause from governing law of contract in order to terminate the contract or to delay the obligations? So which one of you would like to take this up?
I can answer from the practical experience, Jidesh.
Yes.
It's a very good question. Unfortunately, I think, Jidesh, you also said force majeure is arising out of the contractual provisions.
Yes.
Unless there is a contractual requirement, we can't bring force majeure. Like earlier, I gave the example of lenders, because in any lending arrangement, you won't find any force majeure, and if there is no force majeure, you cannot bring it. So therefore, if the contract says force majeure, you can always rely on that. But then, to prove force majeure itself, there is an element of cause and effect relationship. So to prove that, to establish that, things are not so easy. And in the pandemic situation, we are having the same difficulty. Whether pandemic can trigger force majeure or not, there is some element of doubt in that. So we are relying on government regulations. If the government says in this pandemic situation you can't work, you should stop working, then obviously we are not only depending upon the force majeure clause, we are depending upon the government regulations clause also, unable to work due to government restrictions.
And just to add,
No, sorry, Deepak, yeah.
yeah, just to add to your point regarding governing law, at least in Indian context, only the frustration of contract will help you, but that will only give you a remedy to terminate, but not to suspend the contract.
So just one last question before we conclude this. This is from Frenny Patel. What Frenny asks is, with the coronavirus pandemic, are you going to be hiring a lot more lawyers, or are you going to be using a lot of external counsel? I think there's also of personal interest to both me and Param.
Well, I can start off on that because we've just hired 2 from the campus, and we've stood by our commitment, and they've joined us in June. And as I had mentioned earlier, this is a great time for us to impart training and learning to them. So we have continued. We are strengthening our team at this moment. So I feel maybe perhaps other corporate would do the same.
Okay. I think right now we are all on suspension mode. Just wait and see what happens. Once we open up, then certainly, we will take a call on that. It depends, it's a cost-benefit analysis kind of thing, because if the businesses can really continue to make money in the foreseeable future, definitely we will hire and we will engage more external lawyers also.
Thank you. Thanks a ton. Thanks.
Very positive note on which to finish this.
So before I conclude the event, I wanted to point out that any unanswered questions will be taken up offline, and we'll reach out to you with some response. So I would now like to conclude this webinar with a note of thanks to Lex Witness for setting up this platform. I also want to thank all of you for being an excellent audience. At the same time, I also want to, last but not least, I also want to thank our family members who have let us participate in this webinar without much disturbance. So good evening and have a great weekend.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.